Hi, welcome to the CCAS industry update and my first video format of talent acquisition hints and tips. And this edition, I wanted to focus on interview technique. I recently posted a carousel on LinkedIn with my 5 top tips for getting through interviews in the best possible way. And I thought it'd be worth adding on some extra detail around that. Some of these things might appear obvious and basic, but you'd be surprised the things that people miss out on. So starting off, in this contemporary world, more and more video interviews are happening all the time. One of the things that people forget is business dress, casual dress, still, addressing appropriately for an interview. Turning up to a video interview in a t-shirt or something without a collar simply doesn't fly. I advise all of my interviewees to dress as if they were turning up in person. And also think about your background as well. Now, you might be out in a coffee shop, out on a bench in a park, at the beach or whatever, and that's great. But if you're at home, just make sure the backdrop behind you is tidy and smart, because it's still a reflection of you and your attention to detail. One of the main things that I say to everybody in every interview is it's about leaving the hirer, the interviewer, with confidence. It's about them thinking if they throw the ball to you, for a sports metaphor, you're going to catch it and you're going to go. You can tell I'm a rugby fan and not a football fan, because that's what they really need. At the end of the day, they're not interviewing to fill an empty chair. They're interviewing because they've got a problem, a challenge, and they want someone that's going to handle that for them. So it's about giving them confidence that you're that person. So everything you do in terms of your mannerisms, your presentation, your preparation, and your answers needs to give them that confidence. If you're the person that leaves them feeling the most confident that you can handle the role, you'll definitely improve your chances of getting that position. You need to be on time. With video interviews, if you haven't got Zoom, Teams, Google Meet, if you haven't used these before, they're perhaps not on your computer, your device, your tablet, make sure it's loaded up. Make sure you've tried it out in advance so you can attend properly. It's a bit like if you're attending an interview in person, making sure you know where they are. You've looked on Google Street View, you've checked the address, you've checked your route and your travel. Otherwise, turning up late and saying, oh, sorry, I had a technical issue, probably doesn't cut it, especially in our world, of course, where you're meant to be somewhat tech savvy as well. You need to be engaged and you need to be positive as well. Now, the easy way to demonstrate that is always be looking forwards. The reason you're interviewing for this role is because this role is a great opportunity, not because of something that's gone wrong with where you are. It's an old adage about not bad mouthing the role you're leaving. But of course it's true, because the moment you've left that company, that's no longer your problem normally. So you always want to be leaving and looking forward to something positive. Therefore, you want to be engaged with the business that you're interviewing with. And they don't want to feel like this is just a job, but they want to feel that you're interested in this job. And you can demonstrate that through some of your preparation and, of course, how you conduct yourself. So you should be showing your research. Now, going back to when people attended interviews in person, I used to say, if you've been on the website for the company, you've been on the LinkedIn page, you've been on the careers page, print some pages out, highlight some points that are key to you, and have those in your notes that you take into the meeting room. The client, even if you don't refer to them, will see that and will remember that you're someone who came prepared. Now, if we're doing a video interview like this, you can't see what's on my desk here, but you can see if I'm referring to something, if I'm clearly looking at a notebook, if I'm marking things off. So you should always be preparing your research and your questions physically. Perhaps it's on a second screen like I've got just over here, but they can see through your body language, where you're looking, what you're doing, that you are interacting with something and you're not sat there just staring at the camera and seemingly thinking up things off the top of your head. Show your skills as well. Now, I don't mean be prepared to do technical tests in every interview. Personally, I think the days of technical tests in most interviews are well gone. They don't really show someone's ability to do the job on a day-to-day basis. But be prepared to go into the weeds. So if they ask you, have you got experience in something? Yes, this is where I did it. This is how I did it, and really talk about the detail. And this is the benefit and the outcome to the stakeholder, the client, the customer. But even if someone is talent acquisition, internal recruitment, HR, operations, so not necessarily technical, they're working probably for a technology business. Therefore, their awareness and knowledge of the product is probably far higher than perhaps you think it is. So do go into the detail. Don't worry about boring them. People that give Superficial answers or textbook answers do tend to fail interviews. But certainly a lot of the feedback that I hear, people say, well, they maybe know how to do something, but they didn't really seem to understand why they would do it that way, or perhaps why they wouldn't do it that way in a different scenario. So do show your skills and be prepared to talk through them. Demonstrate leadership. This is one of the points on the carousel that I put on LinkedIn that generated some conversation with me. Well, what if I'm not applying for a leadership role? It doesn't necessarily have to mean that. It doesn't mean that you're going to go out and manage people, but it's about taking the lead in your role, being proactive, looking for opportunities to offer that extra service to a stakeholder, to a customer, to a client, going above and beyond. Again, using an old adage, showing my age, dress for the role you want. That's why you turned up dressed as Batman. But it is true, show that you can do things beyond just what is prescribed to you. One of the challenges that people in smaller businesses find with hiring people from larger corporate structures is where people have been more siloed, and so they have more support, more departments to rely upon in their jobs, and they don't have as much flexibility in their skill set. But actually, if you think about it, you probably have stretched outside the bounds of your role, even if you've worked in quite a siloed structure. So make sure you highlight that and talk about you. I did this. I was responsible for that. Not we did this. This is what my team did. Taking individual responsibility, again, is demonstrating leadership. Prepare for character questions, behavioural questions, soft skills, whatever you want to call them. How do you handle challenges? How do you deal with conflict? Have you had a difficult situation and how did you overcome that? If you had conflict within a team, what did you do to try and resolve that? Those sorts of questions, they're always going to come, so make sure you've thought about that sort of thing in advance. You can, of course, go and Google some of those character-based questions that might come up in interview. If you ask ChatGPT to ask you some questions, it will do, and you can prepare that way. Stretch those interview muscles, particularly if you've not done an interview in a while and you can't just memory recall on some of those answers, but you really do actually need to think about it. One of the key things, going back to what I said earlier, understand why you want this job and not just any job. And this will vary individual to individual, job to job, but really spend some time thinking about why this role, why this opportunity matters. What is it about the company? What is it about the project, the product, the technology, whatever it might be? What matters to you? And it might seem very individual and therefore not perhaps as relevant, but actually that'll make you stand out to a hirer. When they're going through their wash-up phase, when they've interviewed a few people and they're saying to their colleague, hey, do you remember that person who said they really liked this opportunity because of that? That was interesting, wasn't it? Even if it's slightly funny, it just makes you stand out. And that's the key, is making you memorable and making you stand out for the right reasons in the interview process. And of course, last and not least, ask questions. I always tell people that are interviewing via me to prepare at least 2 or 3, maybe 4 or 5 questions in advance. Have them noted down. Look at the website, look at the LinkedIn pages, look at the news pages, Google the company, what's happening out there from a media point of view, what jobs are they advertising, who works for them, do you know anybody, where has that interviewer worked before, what have they got on their LinkedIn. Look at all of it. Anything that occurs to you of interest, gaps in the job description, gaps in the skill set, something that looks like a bit of an outlier from a technical point of view, anything the recruiter has said, anything that comes on from the previous interview. There's so much you can be asking, and you really need to leave every interview fully informed. So ask those questions. Be prepared to anyway. Have them noted down. You're not having to think about them off the top of your head. And if through the process of the interviewer does a brilliant job and answers a lot of those questions, you physically got it there in front of you. You can pick that up and say, actually, you've answered a lot of these questions as we've gone through. That might spur something else on, it might not. But again, they can see you prepared. And it's no bad thing if an interviewer thinks, well, I did a good job there. I covered off everything they needed to hear. You won't always have time to ask all of them as well. Don't worry about that. If you're working with a recruiter, internal or external, those questions that didn't get answered, send them on and say, could you please find this out for me? We didn't get a chance to go through that today. Again, demonstrates good preparation and leaves you fully informed. If you follow all of these tips, I absolutely guarantee you, based on my 20 years experience, that it will improve your chances of getting that dream job that you have no doubt worked very hard to get that interview for. So if you've got any specific questions, do feel free to reach out to me. Otherwise, like and subscribe on the YouTube channel, subscribe to the LinkedIn newsletter, and stay tuned for more great content. Thanks.